this morning, but whom I know since my days at Aligarh Muslim University. And Dr. Wani, Dr. Joseph Linhoff, the moderator of this panel, Dr. Hasina, Dr. Ishaq, and also the brothers and sisters behind in the organizing team for this conference, very important conference, especially when Brother Ataur Rahman. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, as-salatu was-salam, as-salatu was-salam, Rasulullah. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, huwa allazi ba'asa fil ummiyin rasulan minhum yatlu alayhim ayatihi wa yuzakkihim wa yu'allimul kitab wal hikmah wa in kana min qabli lafi zalalin mubin. I'm also happy to see here several people from the Department of Islamic Studies, Aligarh Muslim University, where I did my master's degree before going to study at Temple University with Professor Ismail Al-Faruqi from 1980 onwards. As said by Dr. Linhoff, my presentation is going to be about Muhammad Asad in the eyes of the Jews after he converted to Islam. So I have a PowerPoint which I want to share. So can you please allow me to share? Yeah, okay, good, thank you. And you can tell me once if I go over time. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Okay. My topic, as I said, is Muhammad Asad, conversion to Islam, conversion in the after conversion in the eyes of the Jews. Okay. My presentation looks briefly at what does Judaism say about conversion of a Jew to other religion, and also, sorry. Yeah. And also I'm looking at 4 scholars who have written about him, and I'll come to them in chronological order as I go through. So I don't need to mention their names now. I will, the names will appear as I go forward. So what does Judaism say about a Jew converting to Islam? From the view of Halaka, the Jewish law, that is, a Jew always remains a Jew, always remains a Jew. Even if he lives Islam, whether he was born as a Jew or converted to Judaism. And although a person may formally and ritually convert to another religion, according to Halakha, that person remains a Jew. And this is stated in the Talmud that it is impossible for someone to cease to be a Jew if he ceased to be a Jew, which states that the covenant between God and Israel was made with that. I need to move. Okay. All right. With the covenant between God and the Jews, which stands here with us today before the Lord our God, also with him that is not, who are not here with us here today. This also means that a child born of a Jewish mother has to be born of a Jewish mother, even if he or she has left Islam, is considered as a Jew. That is from Maimonides or Ibn Maymun. It is clear that in comparison to other religions, a person who has left Islam, who has left Judaism becomes a very complicated issue due to the concept of Jewishness, which is not determined by faith or practice, but by a person's birth or lineage. And a Jew remains a Jew, as I mentioned earlier. The conversion of Muhammad Asad from Judaism to Islam, who became a very erudite scholar of his own right, with the hallmarks of accomplished knowledge of Hebrew, Aramaic, the language of Isa alayhi salam, classical Arabic, and also the biblical background of the Quran, which all these are in the background of his translation and commentary of the Quran, and also the Sahih al-Bukhari and his other works. All this, his conversion to Islam disconcerted many of the Jewish scholars who are scholars of Judaism and Islam. First of them is Jude al-Teller, who reviewed the book Road to Mecca, and he criticizes Asad as one who is not born as a Muslim, but views Islam as only the religion of salvation, as the only means of salvation. And he says that he is not appreciative of the book because he says it is written in a very journalistic design or style to entertain a general reader. And he views Arabs as a people in limbo, neither in the East nor in the West. Jude also tells that the origins of the Quran are from Judaism's written law, which is the old view of the Orientalists, and also basic texts of Christianity. So in his view, Asad does not have a correct understanding of the meaning of the separation of church and state. Protestantism is the source of social action in America, and Catholicism is the healthiest offers the impulses, social impulses in Europe. So Asad, in his view, is a person who romanticizes about Arab women. So he says instead of becoming a Muslim to seek affirmation in life, he could have remained in Judaism. Therefore, his conversion to Islam is more out of his personal and spiritual turmoil rather than life affirmation. He also says that Asad overlooks European anti-Semitism, of which he himself was a victim. And he says that he was welcomed by the Arabs just because he was a correspondent who did service to the Arabs. Other points which he makes, that he says that Asad moved to India and Pakistan because of feeling of insecurity and the height of Arab-Jewish tensions in 1930s in the Muslim world. So in the eyes of Jude, he says that who writes best when dealing with sensual, Asad is a man who writes best when he writes about sensual, erotic, and worst when discussing theology. The other scholar whom I know personally is Professor Martin Kramer. He's an arch-Zionist Jewish scholar and the founder of Shalom College in Jerusalem. He wrote an article very critical, and you can see it from the title. The title is article, The Road from Mecca, Mohammad Asad. And this is in the book, The Jewish Discovery of Islamic Studies, which is a fellowship in the honor of his professor, his teacher, Bernard Lewis, again, a Zionist scholar, and it was published by the Moshe Dayan Center. Now, let's see what Martin Kramer says. Martin Kramer says that after reaching Mecca, Muhammad Asad's life journey was full of trials and rejections and sufferings, and he had to go away from Mecca back to the West. Why? The reasons are that he was being constantly rejected in the views of Kramer by his Muslim co-religionists. So he was like a wandering Muslim who did not comprehend what Islam was before his conversion. So he went back to seek refuge in the West. Asad also says that Arabs as the descendants, he says when Asad sees Arabs as the descendants of David and Abraham, who were being persecuted by the Zionists, making him a sympathizer of the Arabs. In misleading his readers, Kramer says that Asad became a Muslim because of his hatred for his father, which is actually not true because I researched on it. And Talal Asad says that in his article about his father, he says, I'm summarizing here, that his father was basically a great scholar, but when he heard about the death of his father and sister in the gas chambers, he saw him cry for the first time in his life. So it is wrong to say that he was not concerned with the persecution of Jews during during Nazi's Germany. Asad, and he says Asad never found the ideal Islam among the Muslims, which because there's a gap between Islam as ideal and practice, so he returned back to the West. Even Maulana Abul Ala Maududi was who was very respected about in Islamic circles, was critical of Asad. He saw Asad as a progressive Muslim who did not remain a staunch Muslim but kept on compromising his positions. And this is Asad who as a progressive Muslim who kept on changing his positions because of the market value and marrying a modern girl. And Maulana Abul Ala Maududi's criticism of Asad is contained in his books, in his writings with Maryam Jamila, where he says that, I'm summarizing again, that Asad was a progressive Muslim and he compromised and he married a young American girl, and he was very accustomed to high modern standard of living after embracing Islam, and had to face the financial difficulties. So he compromised because of financial difficulties. So for Kramer, this is like a fodder. So he says that that's why Asad suffered after reaching Mecca. So he titles his article as a road from Mecca. And Asad craved, because Asad basically craved for rational Islam and an Islam which will fit for the modern age with Saudi Arabia and Pakistan after Muhammad Ali Jinnah, who made him the first citizen of Pakistan, and his envoy to UN, and after Prime Minister Liaquat Ali's tenure, Asad was shunned in Pakistan and he returned to the West. Now, about commenting on the Quran's translation, Asad, he says, and everybody knows that Kramer says that Asad was upset that the traditional ulama did not accept his translation of the Quran because of it was a modernist and allegorical interpretation. It denies the existence of angels and permissibility of concubinage, denial of bodily ascent of Jesus, and supporting the rights of women and the rejection of hijab. So Asad was accused of introducing, and this I have heard from many, many sources who were working or who saw Asad in Mecca, working at the Muslim World League office, who said that, who accused him of introducing Israeliyat, or the Jewish distortions in the Quran translation, which was published even before it was published, when the first version was published in 1974. So it later on led to the banning of the translation of the Quran by Mohammad Asad. The other scholar is Professor Shalom Goldman. He's a Jewish scholar of religion at Middlebury College in Vermont, and he wrote an article, Leopold Weiss, the Jew who helped invent the modern Islamic State. In his view, he comes out with he says that the idea of Islamic State came to Asad after his discussions with Iqbal and Muhammad Ali Jinnah, and they are presented in the book State and Government in Islam. He comments that for Asad, the Islamic form of government in modern age should not be a slavish imitation of the past, nor a distortion of the meaning of jihad as being aggression of Muslim rule over non-Muslim territories, discriminating against the non-Muslim minorities residing in Muslim countries in the name of Sharia, the spreading of takfiri ideas or call for Muslims to be the opponents of those holding in power as kafirs. And in his view, Asad's view of Islamic State is so modern that it even talks about religious tolerance of Jews, Christians, and others. So Professor Shalom Goldman finds fault with Asad that while Asad advocated the Islamic State, he rejected the Zionist Jewish state. Goldman is not able to distinguish, in my view, of Asad. Asad sees Judaism as a tribal religion, while Islam is a universal religion. And that the modern Islamic State was not based on exclusivist nationalism, but religious pluralism and cultural cosmopolitanism in the view of Asad. Goldman says that after conversion to Islam and living in Mecca, many of the Pakistani elites grew jealous of him. Professor Linhoff mentioned about this yesterday. That is why he thought he was so Asad was so paranoid by the treatment he was receiving from the Pakistani counterparts that when Goldman requested for an interview with him, Asad remarked, Shalom Goldman sounds like a rabbi. Tell Goldman that I have no intention of returning to Judaism. Yet for Goldman, in spite of his criticism, he admires that in spite of converting to Islam and facing many trials, Asad remains very popular and has millions of admirers among the Muslims in Pakistan and India, and even like of us all who are here today. So Asad promoted, as again yesterday mentioned by a speaker, a reasoned discourse of the Quran and Islam, and he called on others to employ this kind of approach. And Talal Asad, in his article, makes it very clear, and I quote him. He says that his father was not a political thinker, but rather a religious thinker for whom the Quran and Sunnah together formed what he called the most perfect plan of human living. The last author here is Abraham Rubin. He's a postdoctoral fellow at Buber's Society as a Fellows of the Hebrew University of Jerusalem. And he has written an article, not the last, is the third one. I'll come to the last later on. He wrote an article, Mohammad Asad's Conversion to Islam, as a case study of Jewish self-orientalization. Sorry, this is the last speaker I'm talking about, last author I'm talking about. It is a very large article. I've given the reference. He says Asad's conversion is a case of self-orientalization caused by rejection of the Jews in Christian Europe and finding for self-identity and dignity what Iqbal would call as khudi. And he criticizes Asad's searching for meaning outside Judaism, and as he's the case of a Jew losing his religion and becoming a vagabond wanderer. Rubin regrets that Asad does not discuss about the persecution of the Jews in Europe, which again, the Jewish scholars always point on this, emphasize on this point, which actually is not true. And Asad was a post-liberal person, anti-Zionist, who did not figure out Jewishness of Zionism. For Asad, Zionism was a colonizing movement similar to the British. We discussed about this yesterday. So Rubin is unhappy with Asad's affirmation of Arab Bedouins as ancestors of Abraham and David as Semites. Actually, this point of view that Semites are, Arabs are the Semites, which includes the Jews, is the view of Philip Hitti, Ismail al-Faruqi, and many other scholars, while the Jewish scholars always try to separate themselves from the Arabs, and this becomes problematic. This is all debate about in Near Eastern studies. So for Rubin, Asad was a new Jew in the guise of a nomadic Arab. He is critical of Asad, seeing his conversion to Islam as being both a return to biblical past and Islamic universalism or authentic monotheism. Rubin points out that Asad's frustration with Muslims was because of Muslims not practicing the religious teachings of the Quran. For Rubin, Asad's emphasis on the role of reason and understanding and practicing of the Quran and Sunnah represent the universalist, progressive, and rationalist ideas of Europe, not of Islam. So for Rubin, what Asad is doing is orientalizing himself and also offering a Protestantized version of Islam, which is at odds with the indigenous forms of Islam. In other words, it is not authentic Islam. So he accuses Asad of Protestantizing Islam. And my critique of this view of Rubin is that Asad, with his native and original understanding of Islam from the perspectives of classical Arabic, Hebrew, and Aramaic, and also his knowledge of the biblical background of the Islamic monotheism, Rubin doesn't get the whole idea, so he conjectures and is unable to recognize the authenticity of the Quranic universalist monotheism as a worldview and a practice, which is very, very difficult for the Jewish people to accept, because in their view, monotheism is nationalist. It is connected with the race, and that is a form of shirk. So no matter how much far are the Muslims from practicing the true teachings of Islam, he doesn't understand that that Islam has to be understood as a culmination of the previous streams of Christianity and Judaism culminating into Islam. For Rubin, Asad is a lonely convert whose self-discovery remained incomprehensible to the Muslims, for he remained attached to Judaic Euro culture from which he did not part away. As per Rubin, Asad failed to self-orientalize himself through conversion to Islam. And of course, for the Muslims, writings about Asad and Asad's own works talk differently. So this view of Rubin does not hold water, because Muhammad Asad remained a Muslim till his last breath. Let me skip here a little bit because maybe I'm running over time. Let me go directly to the conclusion. Sorry. Okay. My conclusion is this, that for Asad, Islam is a religion that encourages tolerance of other religions. And even Talal Asad mentioned that Asad's view of Islam was very, very comprehensive, which emphasizes on this ayat in Surah Al-Baqarah, إن الذين آمنوا والذين هادوا ونصارى والسابين من آمن بالله واليوم الآخر ومن الصالحين فلهم أجرهم عند ربهم ولا خوف عليهم وهم يحزنون, which is unfortunately not much referred to by the Muslims when we talk about Jews and Christians. For Asad, the Quran addresses human beings by appeal to reason. So for him, Islam is a reasoned discourse. And this is the idea of discourse. Islam is a discourse. It's taken over by his son, Talal Asad, in Anthropology of Islam. So Islam is an antidote to the perils and the poisons of excessive materialism, actually, which we are seeing today in the form of global ecological crisis and the COVID-19 pandemic, which have impacted the mental health of everyone, because all evil, as per the Quran, comes from the human beings and not God. So finally, my final comment here is that Asad was and remained a Muslim till the end of his death or end of his life, as he categorically stated that I have no intention of returning to Judaism. And this upsets Jews who criticize Mohammad Asad of being a heretic and a betrayer to Judaism. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Professor Yusuf. Oh, wow. There's a lot to get my head around there. That was incredibly enlightening, thoroughly enjoyable. I really look forward to seeing the written version in the conference proceedings.
Inshallah.
I'm going to exercise chairperson privileges and just take up 10-15 seconds, just kind of speaking what's running through my mind. What's fascinating is how these different critics are criticizing different things, Maududi and also the Jewish writers, which kind of says, you know, when you criticize, it says as much about the critic as the criticized. But what does that say about them? But also there's the similarities, you know, that there seems to be a common theme here. You know, these Jewish writers, they don't really like Asad. They don't know what to do with Asad. And, you know, what they admire about Asad, the rationality and the reason and the tolerance, that they almost seem determined to attribute it not to Islam. No, this is to the European background. This is to the Jewishness. Yeah, Asad. There's lots. There was just thank you for a really enjoyable panel. And also thank you for your timekeeping. We're doing very, very well with timekeeping so far. Alhamdulillah.